One of the things that I found really sort of stimulating and enriching about writing this book was that even though in many cases I was writing about a history, I was writing about issues that the Romans faced, that the early Hebrew tribes faced, that the original colonists in New York faced, it turns out that we're facing almost the identical challenges today, right? How do we ensure the water is safe to drink? Any settled society has got to be able to figure out, one, where is the source of clean, safe water? Two, how do we protect it? And three, how do we deliver it? How do we basically allocate who gets the water and get it from point A to point B? And what's fascinating is the same issues that the Romans, over 2,000 years ago, were wrestling with, we're wrestling with as well. So for example, U.S. Geologic Survey did a study in 1999. They found, of streams around the United States, they found 82 different contaminants in 80% of the streams, and these contaminants included pharmaceuticals, personal care products, all kinds of synthetic compounds. Our streams are effectively polluted. And to that extent, the drinking water that we get out of our tap and the bottled water, because much of bottled water comes from tap water, filtered tap water, sometimes not even filtered, that's polluted as well. And so it gets to the fundamental question of, is the water safe to drink? And that turns out to be a very complicated question to answer. And the reason for that is that you have to then say, well, compared to what? Right? We don't drink distilled water. In fact, it turns out to be a bad idea to drink distilled water. But the fact is, when we get water from our tap, when we drink bottled water, we are drinking water that most likely has some contaminants. So you see Reader's Digest and some other publications have these sort of blistering headlines. Did you know that the water you're drinking may contain arsenic, rocket fuel, pharmaceuticals? And of course, most people are going to say, oh my God, I had no idea, and run screaming, and then, I don't know, do something, put on a filter or buy more bottled water or whatever. The problem is the Reader's Digest cover story, it's accurate and inaccurate at the same time. Yes, our drinking water may contain those constituents, but that doesn't mean it's unsafe. Those constituents are at extremely, extremely low levels, sometimes the equivalent of one dropper of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Now, does that mean there's no risk? No, right? No activity in human life has no risk. The fact is, we engage in a lot of activities, and it's all relative measures of risk. My own view when people ask me, is tap water safe to drink, is to say, yeah, it is safe to drink, but it's not risk-free. And there's a difference. And so, my own view is that as a society, Americans are far more risk from what we eat than from what we drink. Obesity is a much more serious threat to the nation's well-being than our drinking water. And in fact, when you think about the number of people that are served by municipal water, it's quite remarkable just how clean the drinking water is. Now, some folks say, well, I'm going to drink bottled water because that's going to be safer. Not so fast. The fact is that bottled water, because of some statutory, I guess, just sort of weirdness, the drinking water from the tap is regulated by the EPA under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Bottled water is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, under a separate law, and they're regulated far differently. It turns out that our drinking water is much more closely regulated than bottled water. Much more closely regulated than bottled water. And if you look at the studies that have actually been done on bottled water, oftentimes 20 to 30% of the bottles that are tested have more contaminants in them than the tap water. Now, it doesn't mean that the bottled water is bad for you, but what it does suggest is when you look at the actual governmental examination, the regulation and the implementation of those regulations, there's good reason to think that our tap water probably will be safer than our bottled water. Are there contaminants sometimes in our tap water? Are there problems with our tap water? Absolutely. Right? We don't invest nearly enough in the infrastructure for our tap water. But don't think that by buying bottled water, suddenly you're buying something that's much safer. It may be safer, but we just don't know.